If you've been asked to work with a group of people to get them to do something different, then you know how hard it is to get people to change. And we have this whole idea around change management as being a discipline that we can execute in lockstep and that the change is going to happen as scheduled. And if you've ever been on the receiving end of that or the delivery end of that, you know how ineffective it can be at the end of the day. It can be great for communication planning and for training and for getting people formal things that they need to know how to do their jobs differently. But it lacks the essence of getting leaders to really embody new ways of working so that they can lead the way through transformation and change. That might be something that you're responsible for doing, or it might be something that needs to happen across your leadership team. Either way, I'd love to share with you a few ideas about how you can really inspire leaders to activate change for themselves before they try to manage change for other people. At Kerrigan's Group, we have seen the power of leader activation really take hold in organizations and significantly accelerate transformation efforts. I'm Julie Williamson. I'm the Chief Growth Enabler at Kerrigan's Group, and I've had the great opportunity to work with many clients as they try to transform their organizations. I'd love to share with you some ideas that we have about what can really get leaders to step into that activation space and forget about managing others and pay more attention to how they're modeling the way to transform their organizations. Let's start at the top of the food chain with the most senior leaders involved in a transformation or a change effort. There are a couple of things that we've observed over the years that happen all the time. One is they're way better at telling than talking. Telling people means pushing forward on an email that a comms person wrote for you, or doing a town hall and hitting all the bullet points on the slide that someone created. Those are all important things for leaders to do, but it's insufficient to drive transformation in the organization. Talking is really important because it's how we create shared meaning between people about what's needed. Being willing to have authentic conversations about what the change is, what the transformation is, how it's going to be hard, and what people need to do differently in order to be successful is absolutely a way that leaders need to lean in and activate the transformation for themselves. So number one, leaders have to move from telling to talking. And if you're responsible for helping a leader through that process, help them to get into the space of really having a great conversation with their people about what the transformation is going to be. If you are in that role as a leader, get comfortable with having those conversations. Make the time. It will absolutely accelerate your speed to success. Second thing that I would share is that leaders at that level need to visibly change themselves. If you don't have to change how you lead, you are probably not transforming the organization. When leaders take on the hard work of changing how they lead, and they do that in alignment with the goals of the transformation, and they make that visible to other people in the organization, they will absolutely accelerate, again, speed to success for the transformation. The challenge with that is many leaders feel like they got into their leadership roles doing what they did in the past, and it's been very successful for them. They're very comfortable with how they're leading, and they may believe very strongly that the way that they lead is appropriate for today and for tomorrow. Again, if you're actually transforming the organization, there are at least a few new leadership skills that leaders need to adapt to. It might be the kinds of questions that they ask people about what are they focused on, how are they prioritizing, where are they putting their resources. It might be that leaders have to connect with their peers differently across the organization in order to deliver in the transformed format. It might be that leaders have to take on a different role for themselves. They actually have to acquire some new skills too. All of these kinds of things require leaders to change themselves, and making that visible to their colleagues is a really powerful accelerator for transformation in your organization. A third challenge that really gets people out of that change management mindset and more into that activation mindset is where you're putting your time and your energy around your focus areas. Mindsets and group dynamics have an incredibly powerful impact on transformation, but many leaders like to focus on what we call organizational factors. Organizational factors are things like your org chart. How many of you have been through an organizational redesign? I mean, we go into clients that have redesigned the organization sometimes 2 or 3 times a year, sometimes for years on end. And people are always like, well, I guess this is my job today, but tomorrow it might be different. Or I report to 3 different people because I used to report to this person and then they reorged, but they never stopped me reporting to that person. So now I report to these other people. It kind of gets to be a mess after a while. But organizational factors like the org chart will not transform your organization. Sometimes you do need to do organizational redesigns, but they need to be in the spirit of supporting the transformation effort, not as a solution for people being slow to change. Another organizational factor that people love to muck with is the compensation plan or titles. So they'll say, well, we're going to retitle everybody, or we're going to change the compensation bands that we have people associated with. Or if you're transforming a sales organization, which by the way, sales transformations are super fun to do. When you're doing that, they want to muck with the compensation model for salespeople, because they'll say things like, what gets measured gets done. Well, in my experience, what gets measured gets manipulated. People are able to get their goals to fit within any kind of structure that you put out there. So spend a little less time trying to figure out what's exactly the right comp plan, and spend more time trying to figure out how do we shift the mindsets and the group dynamics that are happening around that leads salespeople or anyone else in the organization who's going through transformation to actually start to work differently together to deliver on the ultimate goals of the transformation. One of the things we know is that when leaders take the time to make mindsets and group dynamics visible, it is absolutely an accelerator for transformation. What holds them back is that mindsets and group dynamics are not as visible as organizational factors, but you can make them visible if you have the right conversations with your teams. By actually talking specifically about the mindsets that people are bringing into their decision-making processes and observing and calling out the group dynamics that you see around the table, you can start to work with those in very different ways. Now, making mindsets and group dynamics visible can feel really uncomfortable for leaders, and that's why they hold back from it. But it is absolutely the accelerator for transformation, because those are the things that are slowing you down. I don't care how much time and effort you put into organizational factors. If you don't grapple with mindsets and group dynamics in a very specific way, you will not reach your results for your transformation or your change as quickly or as effectively, or sometimes even at all, as you could if you were willing to have those conversations and to dive into that hard work. When we talk about mindsets and group dynamics, what we're often looking for is how are people really engaging in hard conversations about tough decisions? And the thing that is probably most familiar to people is prioritization. We hear all the time from companies, you know what, if only we could really prioritize. Or we hear, we keep prioritizing, but then we never actually do those priorities. Like we say that's our priority, but we don't actually put our resources towards it. Or they say, well, we make a decision to prioritize, and then we get halfway down the road, but then we go back to business as usual. These are all really common issues that we see with organizations. The challenge with that is they're not having the conversations, they're not getting to the mindsets and the group dynamics that are creating resistance to prioritization. And so instead they try and fix that by changing the bonus structure, or by changing goals, or by rearranging the org chart, or who reports to who, or whatever. But at the end of the day, what you have to get to is what are the group dynamics and mindsets that are holding people back. Here's an example. If you're going to reprioritize budget and make a different project more important, and that saying that everybody needs to go after that project right now, but doing that means that leader A is not going to make their quarterly numbers for some reason because they've prioritized supporting this other project. If there's a mindset that says we never miss our quarterly numbers, that person is going to do everything they can to make those quarterly numbers, and they're not going to fully prioritize the project that everybody has agreed to prioritize. Here's another example. You might have a situation where you really need the whole leadership team or an entire team to start working differently together in order to accelerate velocity of decision making. That's something we hear about all the time. We're really slow to make decisions. If you want to increase velocity of decision making, you have to change the group dynamics. How are people talking about decisions that need to be made, especially decisions that affect everybody? Here's something that often holds teams back. They don't want to full out say, we're not going to do something. especially if there's someone on the team that feels really passionate about doing that thing. But if you don't say we're not going to do it, and that's not perfectly clear to everybody, and you're not aligning to that, then you are going to slow down the time that it takes to transform. And you're going to significantly increase the effort that it takes to transform. All because there's a group dynamic that says, we don't want to hurt someone's feelings, or we don't want to disappoint somebody, or we don't want to take something away from somebody because we like and respect each other, and we really want to have a very harmonious team experience. You can have a harmonious team experience and have hard conversations. Have conversations where people get disappointed, or where people have to change in ways that are uncomfortable for them, or they have to give up some budget or give up some people in ways that they might not like. There are ways to have those conversations that keep the team in alignment with the goals that they have. So those are a couple of things that I would share about what slows down transformation and why is it so hard for people to really step into that space. In part, it's because they focus on managing change instead of activating leaders around the change. Ways to activate leaders around the change include making sure that they are talking, not telling, and making sure that they're paying attention to mindsets and group dynamics as much, if not more, than they're paying attention to organizational factors. If you hold on to those two things and really go out and try and spread the energy around what does the future hold for us when we're successful with this transformation, you will accelerate your speed to success, and you will also bring everybody along in a way that is really powerful and leaves them aligned to the vision of the future. If you'd like more information about how to do this with your teams, please hit us up at karakansgroup.com. Let us know what's going on in your organization. We'd love to have a conversation with you about it.